Let's now discuss the sulfur cycle. This is one of the less studied cycles and understood in terms of the interactions that the future scenarios that can occur due to the changes in the planetary boundaries. Um, but sulfur is an important mineral in living organisms and it is found in biomolecules like proteins. The key thing about the sulfur is that it is very highly soluble in water and therefore is highly available as compared to, for instance, phosphorus. Another key feature is that sulfur compounds formed during the cycle can act as oxidants or reductants. And this is the dynamics that we will discuss in this lecture. We also have to state that the human activities have made some changes on the sulfur cycle mainly due to the burning of fossil fuels, but also other local or regional at regional scale human alterations have caused disruptions on the sulfur cycle. In this figure, we can see the main interactions happening in the sulfur cycle. And the sulfur cycles occurs between oceans, land, and atmosphere. Atmospheric sulfur is found in the form of sulfur dioxide and enters to the atmosphere in three ways. The first one is the decomposition of organic molecules. The second one is from volcanic activity, and the third one is geothermal, is from burning of fossil fuels by humans. And on land, sulfur is deposited in four major ways: precipitation, direct fallout from the atmosphere, rock weathering, and geothermal vents. Some sulfur containing rocks also weather and release some of the sulfate or the sulfur compounds. This is a natural process that occurs at a small scale and in slow conditions, but the human alterations have made this process to occur more rapidly. Then terrestrial ecosystems can take the sulfate from the soil and it enters the food web. When these plants decompose and die, sulfur is released back into the atmosphere as hydrogen sulfide gas. In this figure, we can see the main transformations of the sulfur that goes from proteins to transformations of reduction or oxidation that will lead to sulfur being available for reactions with metals, for example, or available for generate acid. These are some examples, and these examples are related to the interactions that happen on terrestrial ecosystems. Human activities have played a major role in altering the balance of the global sulfur cycle. The ones that we already know is that the burning of fossil fuels lead to release of sulfate compounds that can then produce acid rain that is corrosive and that can cause several problems to ecosystems, but also to buildings and to human settlements and crops, for putting some examples. This is one of the major human alterations at global scale. Another human alteration at global scale is the increased sulfur loading on the land surface that is leading to doubling the land-ocean flux via rivers and to the coastal zone. So this is the section where there are not enough studies that clearly depict what will be the consequences of these increasing fluxes. We also have some alterations that are at global scale, but they are very, very important. One is exposure of sulfide minerals due to mining activities that releases this acid mine drainage. And the second one is the exposure of sulfide containing soils that causes oxidation and thus sulfuric acid generation, but in soils. Both are very important for Australia because of the characteristics of the soils and because of the high mining activity that occurs here. Both acid mine drainage generation and acid sulfate soils occur following the same process, biochemical mediated process. This is the oxidation of pyrite or sulfide minerals that release sulfate compounds that generate sulfuric acid. And then this sulfuric acid can have other consequences, can leach other metals, and can also be corrosive and make significant damages. Environmental impacts of acid sulfate soils include human health impacts that are dermatitis or from contact and eye irritation from dust, or effects on the ecology of wetlands through fish kills and impacted shallow freshwater and brackish aquifer systems. There are some other economic losses related to crop productivity or impacts on commercial and recreational fisheries. Also, we can mention impacts on infrastructure because of the damage of concrete and steel infrastructure due to the corrosive characteristics of the acid. So far we have discussed the process of sulfur oxidation, and and we also have discussed the human alterations to the sulfur cycle that cause this oxidation. Now we're going to discuss the inverse process that is called sulfur reduction. And it is called biological sulfur reduction because it is mediated by bacteria that are capable of transforming the sulfate to sulfide under anaerobic conditions without oxygen. This is something that occurs in nature, in land, in mangroves and wetlands, and also in oceans. And then in engineered process, it has been applied to treat or to remove sulfate from acid mine drainage or to transform the sulfate, and also to bioremediate soil. So soil can be polluted with oil spillways. These oil spillways can be treated with biological sulfur reduction. This is because crude oil contains both organics and contains sulfur compounds that are needed for bacteria to do these transformations. So this can be a way to bioremediate, so to remove organics and also to transform the sulfate to hydrogen sulfide and make it less viable to or prone to cause environmental problems.